Welcome to Petaplex. In this video, some of the below basics of Python are covered. Behavior of Python interpreter during code execution, syntax rules to follow for strings, integers, and floating values, type function. Python interpreter gets some data from the user and process the data and return a result automatically to the user. The data taken from the user is technically called as input. The result given to the user is technically called as output. Python interpreter takes only one line of code at a time and process the given line and return the output to the user. We have a facility to pass multiple lines of code to the interpreter separating by semicolon. But Python interpreter process all the lines of code internally but display only the output of the last line to the user. To see the output of each line of code, the user must pass each line of code one by one to the interpreter. Then only the user can see the output of each line of code in the interpreter screen. For example, if user want to execute 4 lines of code in the Python interpreter and see the output of all the 4 lines of code, in this scenario, the user must submit the first line of code to the interpreter. The interpreter process the first line and display the output to the user. Once the output of first line is displayed by the interpreter, then only the user must submit the second line of code to the interpreter. Once the output of second line is displayed by the interpreter, then only the user must submit the third line of code to the interpreter. Once the output of third line is displayed by the interpreter, then only the user must submit the fourth line of code to the interpreter. Let's understand this concept practically. Now I open the command prompt, type Python in lowercase and press enter to get the Python interpreter. The Python interpreter is open now. Let's provide some input to Python interpreter. 4000 plus 2000. 4000 plus 2000 is the input I am providing to the Python interpreter. Python interpreter has processed the input by adding the 4000 plus 2000 and returned the output 6000. The calculation done by the Python interpreter, the addition of 4000 plus 2000 is called processing. Let's provide some other input. 4000 minus 2000. We got the result as 2000. 4000 minus 2000 is the input. The subtraction of 2000 from 4000 performed by the Python interpreter is called as processing. 2000 is the output. Let's provide some other input. 4000 multiplied by 2000. 80 lakhs is the output. The multiplication of 4000 and 2000 performed by the Python interpreter is called as processing. Let's provide one more input. 4000 divided by 500. We got the result as 8. 4000 divided by 500 is the input. 8 is the output. The division of 4000 divided by 500 performed by the Python interpreter is called as processing. As of now, we have provided only one instruction at a time. Let's try to pass multiple instructions at a time separated by semicolon. I am copying this code 4000 plus 2000 and pasting here. Use Ctrl plus C for copying the code and Ctrl plus V for pasting the code. I am specifying semicolon here. I am copying the second line of the code 4000 minus 2000 and pasting here followed by semicolon. I am copying the third line of code 4000 multiplied by 2000 and pasting here followed by semicolon. I am copying the fourth line of code 4000 divided by 500 and pasting here. Now I am going to execute all the 4 lines of code in a single statement. Let's see how the interpreter behaves. What is the result we are getting? We are getting the output as 8. 8 is the output of the last line of code 4000 divided by 500. Based on this output, we can understand that the interpreter is displaying only the result of the last line of code and not displaying the results of other 3 lines of code. The reason is Python interpreter is designed to get only one line of code from the user and return only the output of the specific code to the user. As we have provided multiple lines of code, the interpreter displayed only the output of the last line to us. By now, I hope you understood the behavior of Python interpreter when executing code in the Python interpreter. There are multiple types of data available in the real world. Text data, integers, floating values, date values, timestamp values. Integer values are the numbers without decimal point values. Floating values are the numbers with decimal point values. Python interpreter is designed in such a way that if the user input is not understandable by Python interpreter, then Python interpreter throws error. If the user input has any logics and the input is understandable by Python interpreter, then the interpreter processes the input without any errors and return the output to the user. If the user input is just a single value without any logics, then the interpreter simply check whether the given value is understandable. If yes, then the interpreter return the same value back to the user. Let's understand how to make Python interpreter to understand text data. To make Python interpreter understand the type of values, we must follow some rules while providing the values to Python interpreter. Let's understand the rules we need to follow when providing text data as input to Python interpreter. Text data is technically called a string in programming. To make Python interpreter to understand the input data is string, we must enclose the string data within a single pair of single quote or within a single pair of double quote or within three pairs of single quote or within three pairs of double quote. We should remember that we should not enclose the string within a two pairs of single quote or two pairs of double quote. If we enclose the string within two pairs of single quote or two pairs of double quote, Python interpreter will throw error. Let's understand the rules we need to follow when providing integers and floating values to Python interpreter. Integers are the numbers without any decimal point. Python interpreter understands any number without decimal point as integers. Examples are 10, 100, 1000, 500, 700, etc. If we specify a decimal point next to the integers, the value will be understandable by the interpreter as floating value. 10 is equal to 10.0, but the interpreter understands 10 as integer and 10.0 as floating value. 100 is equal to 100.0, but the interpreter considers 100 as integer and 100.0 as floating value. All the numbers with a decimal point will be considered as floating values by the interpreter. Let's understand the scenario in which numbers and floating values are considered as text values or strings. Python interpreter understands the given values as integers and floating values only if the values are provided directly without enclosing the values either between single quote or between double quote. In case if we provide the integer or floating value enclosed between single quote or double quote, Python interpreter simply consider the value as a string or text. If Python interpreter consumes an integer value or float value as a string, then we cannot perform any arithmetic calculation like addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division using the strings. I will explain you this concept in detail with some examples. In this example, 10 is a string, 20.5 is a string. Addition cannot be performed between the two strings, but Python interpreter allows this line of code without any errors. The reason for accepting this line of code is plus operator is designed to behave differently when the operands on both the sides of the operator are strings. Plus is an operator. The values used on the left-hand side and right-hand side of the operator are called as operands. When both the operands are strings, plus operator will concatenate both the strings instead of doing the actual addition operation. Concatenation means combining two strings together one after another. Except the plus operator, the interpreter throws error for all the other operators like minus, multiply, divide, etc. if the strings are mentioned as operands on both the sides. The important point we need to understand and remember is if we try to perform arithmetic operations between strings, Python interpreter will throw error except for the plus operator, and the plus operator performs concatenation between the strings and not the actual addition. How can we know whether Python interpreter considered a given value as a string or integer or floating value? Till now, I explained you that the values enclosed within a single quote or double quote are called as strings. The numbers without decimal point and not enclosed within a single quote or double quote are called as integers. The numbers with decimal point and not enclosed within a single quote or double quote are called as floating values. The integer values and floating values enclosed within single quote or double quote are called as strings. How to get a confirmation practically that the statements I explained till now are true? To practically see the type of value, Python has an inbuilt function called type. The type function gets some value as input and return the type of value as output. When we pass a text value to the type function returns the output as class str. Str is the short form used for string. When we pass an integer to the type function returns the output as class int. Int is the short form used for integer. When we pass a float value to the type function returns the output as class float. Float is the short form used for floating value. Based on the output of type function, we can easily see the type of value in the Python interpreter. We can notice that type function is returning the output as string if the integers and floating values are enclosed within single quote or double quote. Let's practically execute the theoretical concepts learned as of now in Python interpreter. Now, I am in the Python interpreter. I will provide the hello world string without any single quote or double quote and see what is the response of Python interpreter. I am getting error as invalid syntax. The reason is Python interpreter is unable to understand the given input as string because I did not enclose the string within quotes as per the rules we discussed. Now I will provide the same hello world text within a single pair of single quote. Let's see what is the response. The interpreter did not throw any error this time and returned the output without any issues. Now I will provide the same hello world text within a two pairs of single quote. The interpreter is throwing error to me now because I provided the string enclosed within two pairs of single quote. This is illegal in Python. We should never pass a string within a two pairs of single quote. Now I will provide the same hello world text enclosed within three pairs of single quote. Let's see what is the response. The interpreter is able to understand the given input as a string and return the output to me. Now I will provide the hello world text within a single pair of double quotes. The interpreter is able to understand the given input as a string and returned the output to me. Now I am providing the hello world text enclosing within two pairs of double quote. Let's see what is the response. The interpreter is throwing error to me because providing a string within two pairs of double quote is illegal in Python. I will provide hello world text enclosed within three pairs of double quotes. The interpreter did not throw any error this time and returned the output because the interpreter is able to understand the given input as a string. I have demonstrated all the legal approaches of providing a string in Python. Mostly, we will use either a single pair of single quote or a single pair of double quotes to represent a string in Python. I hope you got a clear understanding of how to legally represent a string in Python. Let's provide some integer values without any calculations or logics and understand the behavior of the interpreter. We should provide the integer values without any decimal points and without enclosing the value either within the single quote or within the double quote. We should keep this in mind. I have provided some integer values as input to Python interpreter. Every single integer value I provided to the Python interpreter is returned back to me as the output. We did not get any error from the Python interpreter because the interpreter is able to understand the values given by me as an integer. This clarifies that the interpreter is able to understand the given values as integers. As there are no calculations involved, the interpreter returned the same input value as output. Let me provide some integer values with some logics. The interpreter understood the given values as integers and applied the logics on the input and returned the processed output to me. Now, let's enclose the integer values within single quote or double quote and see what is the response of interpreter. We did not get any error from the interpreter, but the output doesn't look like the addition of the given numbers. The output is the concatenation of the given numbers. As all the operands are strings, plus operator concatenated all the strings instead of doing the arithmetic addition. Let's provide some floating values without any logics. The interpreter understood the floating values and returned the output to me. Let's add all the floating values and see what is the output. The interpreter added all the floating numbers and returned the sum of all the floating numbers as output. Now, I will execute the previous line of code, keeping the floating numbers within single quote. All the floating numbers are concatenated together instead of adding the floating values. This clearly tells that integer values and floating values should not be enclosed within either single quote or double quote. In case, if we enclose the integers or floating values within single quote or double quote, the interpreter consider them as strings instead of integers and floating values. As of now, we have seen that when the operands are strings, the plus operator is concatenating all the operands instead of doing arithmetic operation. Let's perform subtraction, multiplication, and division between the strings and see the response of the interpreter. As discussed, all the arithmetic operators are throwing error if both the operands are strings. Now, I am going to give some string values to the type function and see what is the result. For strings, type function is returning the result as class str. Str means string. Now I will provide some integers to the type function. Let's see what is the result. For integer, type function is returning the result as class int. Int means integer. Now I will provide some float values to the type function. Let's see what is the result. For floating values, type function is returning the result as class float. Float means floating values. Let's provide the integer values and floating values within either single quote or double quote and see the response of interpreter. Type function is returning the type of all the integer values and float values enclosed within either single quote or double quote as string only, not as integer or float. I clearly demonstrated what happens when the integers and floating values are provided as strings. We should remember the rules to follow when providing the values to Python. If the values are passed correctly, we will get the correct result from the interpreter. Otherwise, either we will get incorrect result or Python throws error. Thank you for watching this video. If you are happy with the learning in this video, please like and share this video to your friends and relatives who need this learning. Do not forget to subscribe our channel and press the bell icon to get updates on our upcoming videos.